How do you sort out the so-called jargon from real-world practices that work? Do the members of your organization find some business advice utterly confusing? Welcome to the 2020s Enterprise with Sam Holcman. In this program, we set the record straight and in terms that people at any level of business and technology can understand. Now, here is your host, Sam Holcman.
Welcome to the 2020s Enterprise with Sam Holcman. Today we have a special program, and we have two phenomenal guests with us today. And if you've heard about the term beltway bandits, and that's a little humorous, I hope, this episode of the 2020 Enterprise will be refreshing to you. In this episode, we're going to interview Brad King and Liam Speeden, CEO and CTO of Robbins-Gioia, respectively. They've been operating as a company since 1980, and they approach federal government contracting in a very different way. And they're not the stereotypical beltway bandit contractor that's out there, and that's why we're excited to bring them to you today. They've combined leading-edge capabilities in management and technology with a seasoned understanding of their client's mission, and that's really powerful. They were early an innovator in program management and actually a model for many of the federal contractor firms out there since they've been in business since 1980. And over the years, they've evolved and expanded their offerings around enterprise delivery to combine industry-leading practices in program management, business analysis, one of my favorite topics, enterprise architecture, agile development, and building purpose-built solutions to various challenges in business and government. And they're helping clients achieve lasting, visible successes on every mission scale. So we welcome Brad and Liam to the 2020 Enterprise, and I'd like to first introduce Brad. Brad, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and also about RG?
Well, thanks, Sam. Thanks for having us on the show. Well, I appreciate you going back and talking about Robbins-Gioia as being founded over 40 years ago, or close to 40 years ago. The company was formed by a retired colonel, Colonel John Gioia and Jack Robbins, General Jack Robbins. And they really, because they felt that there was a real need for scalable, high-end, very sophisticated program management capabilities of the private sector to bring those skills into government. And they were very successful in setting that up. And so it's interesting to me as a segue into talking a little bit about myself. They founded the company in 1980, which was about a year into my career, and I was in my first job out of college as a cost and schedules analyst for the Boeing company on the B-1 bomber and the air-launched cruise missile, which were programs that John and Jack were involved in as program executives for the Air Force before they founded Robbins-Gioia. So for me, to fast forward 40 years and be running the company that they created is really quite exciting. And as I mentioned, it was founded on the premise that we wanted to be, the Robbins-Gioia wanted to be the leading industrial supplier of program management services to the government, and they were very successful in doing that. But what we have learned over the last 5 to 7 years is that program management is essential to mission success and enterprise delivery, but it's really not sufficient. And that's why back in 2012, we made investments. We acquired a company up in Boston to bring us a very deep, commercially founded methodology for business analysis. And then we worked with you, as you recall, to train a couple dozen of our consultants and to get them certified as enterprise architects. And so we really viewed that as our way of creating what we call enterprise program delivery, which includes the mashup, if you will, of program management, business analysis, and enterprise architecture to help deliver outcomes for our clients. And so that's matured, and over the last couple of years, the company has been really rejiggering our go-to-market strategy to focus on the needs in industry and in government to modernize their systems, because as you well know, there are way too many companies, and the government is not alone. The private sector industry has the same problem with legacy systems that are still running on mainframes that are 45 years old, and or they've made an investment in an ERP system or leading up to Y2K, and those things are now coming up on 20 years old. So there's a vast market for modernization, and we really have focused our strategy and positioned ourselves to go to market as a trusted advisor to industry and to government as it endeavors to modernize its systems. And frankly, we're getting some really good feedback on that so far.
Fantastic. Sounds like a huge transformation internally too, not just with your clients as you're moving into this new approach, I guess, right, Brad?
Yeah, and probably a good place to introduce Liam because, as you know, Sam, Liam and I go back even before Robbins-Gioia days. As he was an enterprise architect that we relocated from London to help us in North America with some of the large public-private partnerships and things that the government was doing. That was all very interesting stuff. And Liam. After I left my previous employer, Liam jetted out to Silicon Valley for a few years to be a product manager for a large software company out there and ran global products. And he's brought a lot of the agile methodologies into our business. And it's really transformed not only the way that we do software development sustainment for our government clients, but it's also transforming the way that we think about multi-year strategic planning. If you think about a strategic plan, rather than having a strategic plan that you put on a shelf, you update it once a year and then you put it on the shelf and go back to what you were doing before, using a more agile mindset, if you will, around how you develop and execute strategic plans where you have a constant backlog of activities and things that you're doing that are aligned with your strategy. It really is a good way to look at how you can transform your business, and I think that it really has transformed how we operate internally as well as the way we go to market and the way that we perform work.
Fantastic. Well, Liam, with that great introduction, can you talk a little bit more about yourself, please, and what you've done in the past and also at RG here?
Yeah, sure. First off, I think it's beltway bandit was a fair call, and although I'm Australian, I'm not actually a convict. So I'm glad that you didn't put us in that category.
We actually prefer beltway pirate.
Beltway pirate is much better. It's like they followed a code. There was some honor among them. And I'm really glad to be able to join you and talk about enterprise architecture because, like you, this is a subject of personal passion because I see it as essential to making well-informed decisions and establishing a credible roadmap for any organization, whether it's commercial or government. And it's something that's dynamic and doesn't sit on the shelf. And I think we can come back to that, I think, later on in the show, because I think there is a lot or a tendency for people to create something and then go, I've done that, and then it just stays stagnant and rapidly diverges from the reality of the business. But going back to your point about, how did I end up here? I think one of the key things is that I've always been interested in solving big challenges with technology. I started off working in the geospatial arena, in climate change and telecommunications, doing models of ice and snow accumulation for Antarctica and wildfires and soil erosion across Australia, those kind of things. And in that way, I was always looking at modeling systems and data at a very high level of complexity and variability. Over time, though, I became much more interested in how organizations were using information to make decisions and how they were arriving at that need to change and to modernize. And so I sort of parlayed the skills that I built there into being able to model large complex systems. Some of the stuff I was doing in the UK were looking at systems that span the whole of the UK's information architecture for government or global telecommunication systems and things like that. And then increasingly matching that back against the whys of change. Why were the organizations changing? How were they going to enact that change and make good decisions, because there was so much failure at the large transformation level, at that large decision-making level. And a lot of that was based on flawed information or flawed perceptions of technology and change further down the decision stack that was causing a lot of these failures and problems.
So the challenges both in large corporations or large organizations and government seem to be relatively much the same. Is there something, gentlemen, that differentiates what you're seeing in the federal sector versus the essentially the commercial sector? Is there something that is sort of like different? Yes, I know politics, but is there something that you're seeing that in approaches that you have for program management?
Yes, and I think part of that, and this is where RG's ability to and experience across both the commercial and the public sector comes in, and also I bring an additional perspective from my sort of worldwide career, as does Brad, is that the government's about 15 years behind industry best practice in transformation and modernization. And that's partly due to the assumptions and the processes they've put in place, and then they've stuck rigidly to. And one of the things that we're very active in doing is promoting ways to bring the government, in particular the federal government, up to date in terms of those best practices and behaviors, and to be more agile, to stop thinking in 10-year life cycles when they should be thinking in a 1-year life cycle or a 2-year life cycle.
The reception there is good, bad, and different, difficult. You're going against sort of like the 100-year grain, so to speak.
It is interesting and I think noteworthy, Sam, some of the progress that the government is making. Liam and I just got back from a conference down in Montgomery, Alabama, where the Business Enterprise Systems Organization for the Air Force had their summit meeting. And they really are taking a more modern view of how they can achieve modernization. There's a lot fewer silos and a lot closer working with industry that's coming about. They really have, I think, at a very high level institutionally, right up to the Office of the Secretary of Defense, embraced modern methodologies for agile software development, continuous improvement, that kind of thing. And so we're seeing a lot smarter contracting activity. We won a contract here earlier in the year where we're going to be providing enterprise architecture type support and business analysis support across all the functional areas of the Air Force, across all 38 different business areas. They ran a process where it started with, submit a white paper telling us how you would address our problems. They down selected and said, okay, you guys come in and have a 30-minute oral presentation so we could actually look them in the eye and engage with them and talk about what it is they're trying to achieve and make sure that we were hitting their pain points. And then from that, they down selected to a handful of companies that were invited to give formal oral presentations as well as a technical proposal, and they awarded the contract off of that. And that was really a breakthrough for me, and I'd never really seen them run that kind of a process so effectively. And what it did is it really allowed us, by the time we got to our technical proposal, that we really had established a relationship and engaged with them in a way that we felt that we could really address their requirements. And we hope that that kind of a more enlightened approach to engaging with industry to get the right solutions will continue to expand and grow. And frankly, it's sort of in some way, in that way, Liam, I think they're actually a little bit ahead of industry, because I see a lot of problems as we've tried to address the commercial marketplace, where they try to put every people like Robbins-Gioia through their commodity procurement methodologies, which only assures them that they're going to get the village idiot to come in and work for $60 an hour. To be honest, so I think that the government is really moving in the right direction.
I agree. I think it's very positive, and there are a lot of positive signs in government that they are genuinely looking to not do the same thing faster, but a different way to approach solving the problems, having a recognition that what has been done, particularly on the large enterprise-wide programs for modernization, hasn't worked consistently at the rate that they want it to. I think one of the most interesting things from this conference that Brad mentioned was there was a clear identification by the government of a shortfall in knowledge in their contractor community around doing things differently. And that was brought up by the government, as a big risk. Now, the fact that they recognize that, I think, is incredibly positive, in that they were really testing the community to not just give them the latest buzzwords, but to say pragmatically, give them experience and confidence that what was being proposed was not just the latest fad that was going to fail yet again. And I think that was a great step forward.
Fantastic. So we're just going to take a quick break. And this is Sam Holcman with the 2020s Enterprise Program. We're interviewing Brad King and Liam Neeson. We'll see you back here in just a few minutes.
Is your organization in the internet age when those around you are moving into the information age? Are your hallway conversations filled with words and phrases like blockchain, AI, VR, cloud computing, and micro this and that? Are you interested in bringing some method to the madness? Then talk to us. Through years of consulting with clients all over the world, the Pinnacle Business Group and Architecture's Center of Excellence have developed an understanding of what makes a consultant-client relationship work. And this understanding comes to every engagement. The Pinnacle Business Group assists organizations in solving their business and system challenges with its unique, proven approaches, bringing teams of business and system personnel together to jointly define business and system requirements. The teams are led through a series of facilitated activities to provide innovative solutions to their business and system challenges. We look forward to hearing from you. Visit pinnaclebusinessgroup.com. You are listening to the 2020s Enterprise with Sam Holcman. We welcome questions and comments about the program via email to sam@eacoe.org. That's sam@eacoe.org. Now, back to the 2020s Enterprise.
Thank you for joining us. This is Sam Holcman with the 2020s Enterprise. And before our break, I introduced a guest that wasn't here, Liam Neeson, rather than Liam Speeden, and I apologize. And I want to mention the reason was I was trying to make sure that I had Liam's first name correctly, so he said, it's pronounced the same as the actor. And of course, I was just looking at my notes here, and very quickly I made that mistake. So Liam is much more handsome and articulate than the other Liam, by the way. So
he's talking about Neeson over Speeden. He's taller and more successful than I am.
Well, positive cash flow isn't the only measure. All right. So what we want to talk about in the second segment is, as Brad King was mentioning prior to the break, when they were awarded this contract, he went through a pretty rigorous process. And the question to Brad and to Liam, and also for our audience, is what are the differentiators that the government saw that made them excited about your proposal that was there?
Well, I'll probably be better off deferring to Liam to a great extent, but I can say that what we did in that proposal is we brought to the government a commercially proven methodology for how we accomplish requirements definition and modeling of those things, and we presented it to them in a way that they understood they were going to. In addition to developing the requirements and creating artifacts, we're actually creating a living data repository for all those artifacts that can live throughout a software development life cycle. And I think that they like that. And I think the fact that we're pretty rare, a rare bird in the government contracting world, because not too many government contractors play well in commercial as well as in the government space. There are just enough differences in the way that they buy and the way that and the duration of programs, et cetera. And so one of the things that the government asked for on that particular proposal is, and it was the first time in my career that I've seen it, where they actually required that each competitor offer up one past performance recommendation from a commercial client, which is abnormal. Usually it's like, if you haven't done it for XYZ command, you really don't understand our problem. They were really looking for innovative, commercially proven solutions. And so I think that we were able to do that, and then also back it up with some good solid commercial past performance. And that's not real common as amongst us beltway pirates.
That Brad, is a tremendous understanding. I hadn't heard that before. From a federal government standpoint, they were actually looking for practices outside of the federal government. As you said, there tend to be a bit of a closed community. This is very exciting for all of us, both as taxpayers and citizens, and also technologists that are there. Liam, can you amplify a little bit on that, if you can?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we really anchored our proposal to the government in that case, and it's become really the foundation of RG's future direction, is around delivering solutions and focusing on the outcomes of the customer first, rather than necessarily a sort of rigid long-term process of getting there. So what we were really offering is a combination of agility, consistency, scalability, and collaboration, where the agility comes from being able to adapt to the changing circumstances. All of the government agencies, but the DoD in particular, faces a very dynamic operating environment, even on the business system side. And if you're thinking in 5 and 10 year timescales, you're not thinking fast enough in order to be able to help them meet their mission. And that's something that we really focused on in our presentation to them. The consistency comes from having proven methodologies, and that going back to my point about they're not necessarily applying the latest best practices that are proven, not even just in the US, but internationally and in highly competitive industries like telecommunications, retail, commercial space, industrial. And these are all things that have been innovating in areas of supply chain management, maintenance, resource management, personnel management, and those best practices should be being moved into the federal government space. And that, along with that comes the best practices, the standards for business analysis, enterprise architecture, agile development, and other structured development as well. And change management. And then with the scalability, one of the things that agility and the approach that we proposed requires is breaking down what were often seen as separate segments or skill sets and delivering multidisciplinary teams that can actually work closely together, often blended with people from the government in partnership and other third-party contractors who are providing specialist advice or specialist support into a single program team that is able to focus again on those outcomes and on how to deliver those outcomes most effectively for the government and provide them with that information to make good decisions.
One of the other things that we were able to talk about in there, and I think it does differentiate us, I think, from a lot of the contractors around the Beltway, is we really make it part of our mission to improve the organization that we're working with and collaborate with them in a very transparent way, to where hopefully a lot of the boundaries between contractor and staff member begin to disappear. And I think one of the things that allowed us to have such a strong commercial past performance, because we did have to use just one example, but it was a large insurance company They were looking to replace their policy management system of systems, which is some 36 systems, and they wanted to migrate to one. And they hired us, and it was a good 18-month engagement to put those requirements together and help them go through the selection process for what software they're going to use. But part of the process is going in and beginning to elicit the process elements and the user stories from all of the humans that are going to be affected by the change and whose jobs are going to be affected by the changes in technology as well as process, which, by the way, is an important first step in change management. I always say, people really like change, they just don't want to be changed. And so by going through that process, we begin the change management process along with the process of eliciting requirements. And the other thing that we discovered, and this will be a shocker to you, Sam, they had done an estimate of how many processes that they needed to have documented in order to build out their requirements for their new system. And they assumed it was going to be about 250 processes that they were going to have to model. And so we went in and started going through that. And lo and behold, there were processes that they didn't know about. And the number of processes grew by like a factor of 3. And obviously, the typical consulting firm would look at that and, well, wow, we can go and bring in a bunch more consultants. But we went to that client and told them, look, what we think would be more effective and gentler to your pocketbook is if you would second a half a dozen or so of your people to the team, and let's work with them in an integrated way. And that way, when we get done and we leave, they know where the artifacts came from, they understand the processes that we went through, and they have the ability to maintain the data store going forward through the program. And so they took us up on that. So we were actually able to deal with a lot more complexity than we had envisioned without breaking the bank for our client and leaving them in a much better place than they were when we started. And frankly, that's the same story that we told to the Air Force on this contract that I was talking about earlier that we recently won is, yes, we will come in and we will put together teams to go in and elicit all the artifacts that we need to support their mission. But we're planning on taking you with us, and the methodology that we're going to be implementing is going to be a methodology that hopefully will be evergreen in your organization and help you remain successful even after we're done with the immediate tasks.
Well, that's why I mentioned to our audience that this is a very refreshing approach to essentially a partnership with the government. I want to mention a phrase here, gentlemen, that I think is appropriate. A number of years ago, the federal government had a chief information officer. His name was Tony Scott, and he was appointed toward the end of President Obama's term. And Tony has been a client of ours at 6 different companies for almost 28 years. And when he came to the federal government, I had the privilege of meeting with him about 3 or 4 months into his tenure. And I said to him, Tony, you've been in the commercial sector forever, now you're in the federal government. What do you see as different? And he looks at me and he says, Sam, people around here never want to land airplanes. And I looked at him. And he's a private pilot, but what he was talking about, I think, Brad, is exactly what you and Liam and RG are promoting. In other words, it's that trusted advisor role where you leave behind some goodness that can be carried on by the client, which doesn't mean that they're not going to call you back. Am I hearing that correctly?
Well, and that's exactly right. And the good news is we often do get called back because we now have informed, smart customers who know, okay, well, this is a big challenge. My current resources can't handle it. Who am I going to partner with to go ahead and get this, overcome this challenge. And so they usually think of us and say, they came in here and left us a better place before. We can trust them to come in here and deliver the goods. And so, we love repeat customers.
Oh, yeah.
I think one of those aspects is we intend to be there until they achieve those outcomes. And when you have a whole bunch of different contractors, for example, delivering different things, the business analysts are going to come up with their perfect, in-depth business analysis. The enterprise architects are going to describe their architecture. The agile people are going to run off and build software. There is the loss there that gets very much focused on the process and the activity, and the outcome gets lost. And one of the things that I think that we continue to seek to do, and has been foundational for the company, is being there all the way through to that outcome is recognized by the customer, and not sort of getting distracted by the work at hand. And we've some of the work that we do with the Navy and the Air Force, for example, where we've been involved for over 20 years in not only building the software that underpins the solutions that we provide, but sustaining those solutions as well, has been completely based on the fact that we have that close relationship that Brad described, and that we're working hand in hand with them to modernize and to adapt to meet their changing needs, rather than just simply ticking the boxes and turning up each day.
There's a phrase that we've been using when it comes to these types of activities, and we call it bioengineering. And it sounds like a highfalutin commercial phrase, but basically the B stands for business, the I stands for information, and the O, the dreaded organizational activities. And what we see here, it's a three-legged stool. And it's that roundness within an organization, both from a client perspective and, of course, a consultant perspective, that's required. You can have the greatest skills, in the world that are there, but it actually, to us, the key thing is you can't simplify the business until you simplify the business. Technology can add to complexity, but it can't reduce the business complexity until the business is less complex. Coming back to Brad, what you were mentioning just a little bit here before our break, is that the sort of partnership that you saw there when you saw the mass amount of processes that sort of appeared out of nowhere?
Well, I mean, you have a choice to make when you're confronted with those situations. You have the choice to exploit it for the greatest commercial advantage now, or you optimize it for your client. And I think it's just an ethos that we try to adhere to going forward. We actually have a situation with the Air Force and with the Navy where we've been providing, because one of the things that makes us unique, by the way, is not only do we support enterprise architecture and business analysis and program management to support government and industry systems modernization, we do systems modernization. We write code. We actually have our own software products, and one of our software products is the core scheduling engine, and has been the core scheduling engine for the Air Force and the Navy for all of their heavy maintenance, repair, and overhaul for coming up on 25 years, really coming up on 30 years now. And so one of the ways that we've maintained that sole source position with that software and with our services that are related to that software is, because if the Air Force or the Navy wanted to get rid of us, they'd find a way to get rid of us. And so it takes a real discipline to always try to make sure that we're adding value to the customer, adding value to the engagement as we go forward, not resting on our laurels, continuing to behave in an ethical way, and like Liam said, focusing on outcomes, because if we do that, we believe that growth and profit will certainly come our way. But that ethos is really important, and I think that one of the things that I feel about our business is we've got a very cohesive management team, and that permeates all the way down through. But it's all based on those sound values, frankly, that John Gioia and Jack Robbins put in place nearly 40 years ago.
Excellent, excellent. Those are refreshing phrases. I'm sure our audience really appreciates that. And so we're coming up to just a second break here. Again, this is Sam Holcman with the 2020s Enterprise. I'm here with, let me see if I can get it right this time. I'm just joking with you. Brad King and Liam Speeden from R.E.A.L, and we'll return in just a few minutes. We have one more segment coming up on the 2020s Enterprise, talking about essentially government contracting and what I consider to be the more refreshing approach to addressing government needs. See you back here in a few minutes.
Is your organization in the internet age when those around you are moving into the information age? Are your hallway conversations filled with words and phrases like blockchain, AI, VR, cloud computing, and micro this and that? Are you interested in bringing some method to the madness? Then talk to us. Through years of consulting with clients all over the world, the Pinnacle Business Group and Architecture's Center of Excellence have developed an understanding of what makes a consultant-client relationship work. And this understanding comes to every engagement. The Pinnacle Business Group assists organizations in solving their business and system challenges with its unique, proven approaches, bringing teams of business and system personnel together to jointly define business and system requirements. The teams are led through a series of facilitated activities to provide innovative solutions to their business and system challenges. We look forward to hearing from you. Visit pinnaclebusinessgroup.com. You are listening to the 2020s Enterprise with Sam Holcman. We welcome questions and comments about the program via email to sam@eacoe.org. That's sam@eacoe.org. Now, back to the 2020s Enterprise.
Welcome back. This is Sam Holcman with the 2020s Enterprise. And on our program today from R.E.A.L, Robbins-Gioia, is the CEO of Robbins-Gioia, Brad King, and the Chief Technology Officer, Liam Speeden. And we've been chatting about essentially approaches to filling clients' needs, specifically within the federal government, and the changing profile of the partnerships that are out there. And one of the topics that we've been chatting about, just to sort of briefly, was the concept of enterprise architecture. And we completely, I'll say, go against the grain when we look at the internet and we see that people talk about enterprise architecture as solely an information systems activity. Our belief is that what enterprise architecture is about enabling business strategy. And with that, we look at the types of people that are actually involved in enterprise architecture. And one of the things that unfortunately we sometimes see in the federal government and others is specifications for those people to become enterprise architects. For example, they require a master's degree in a science. We just don't agree with that. We believe that what people are trying to do there as an enterprise architect is understand complexity. And a number of years ago, I really had the pleasure and privilege of presenting a course to a young lady that has a very different degree, and it happened to be Brad King's daughter. And Brad, if I can turn that over to you and have you say just a little bit about how she came to this course and what she was able to do once she left that, and what R.E.A.L is doing with those resources that are possibly not what people would think of when they're looking at architects or analysts or designers.
Well, sure, thanks. Sam, I'm always delighted to talk about my daughter, Meryl. She's been the apple of my eye for a long, long time. But she's, obviously a very bright young woman. She got her undergraduate degree from the University of Chicago, Phi Beta Kappa at UC. Went off and got her master's in archaeology at Cambridge in the UK at Trinity College. Came back here to the States and went into the PhD program for Egyptian archaeology at UCLA, and was well down the path toward her PhD in Egyptian archaeology. She spent probably a good 6 months living in a tent in Egypt, digging up artifacts. But she sort of became disenamored with the whole academic track. She was working, long hours, and there were many years ahead of doing that for very little. And she met someone like you hope that your daughter will, a wonderful young man. She fell in love, and she wanted to make a change and go into employment. And despite her incredible academic background, she couldn't even get an interview for an executive assistant position in a company because maybe they felt she was overqualified or it was an unusual background. And I learned something several years before that we sometimes would be wise to look outside of the normal places for talent. When I was a CIO at a company called Day & Zimmerman up in Philadelphia, we were looking for SAP technical type people, and the market was just crazy. And so somebody suggested to me that music majors tend to be good coders and configurers of systems like that. So we went out and we hired about a dozen music majors who were delighted to have the job for a lot less than we're having to pay for SAP people, and we trained them ourselves, and they turned out to be our best resources. So remembering that experience, I told Meryl, I said, look, let's make one more investment, and Frank, you co-invested, thank you, in Meryl and put her through the enterprise architecture certification process. And she came back from that and said, Dad, that was really fantastic. And I'll let you comment on how well she did in the class. But she said, if as I look at this, there really does feel like a career for me. Because if you think about what I've been doing for the last 10 years of my life, I've been studying the architecture of civilization, going back for thousands of years. And it really, is a great place to come from for this. And so, based on that, we brought her into the company and gave her some experience doing that, and she's really gone from strength to strength on that going forward. But what we take away from that is, and I think you've had similar experiences. One of our other more successful enterprise architects was a young woman who happened to be a funerary archaeologist. But we've anthropologists, music majors. These are all people whose minds deal with complexity very well. I mean, the complexities of classical music and things like that's a good primer for what it is that we do. And frankly, it's an inefficiency in the marketplace because a lot of those people have difficulty finding jobs, and with a little bit of training and an opportunity, they can really shine. And we've actually built a program around that concept. It's called the Entrepreneur Experience. We call it the T program, and we're constantly finding young, academically talented people. If you know any out there, please invite them to look us up. But academically talented people from some of these other fields that we can make an investment in, and they become excellent resources for the kind of work that we do as well, and they find it to be a very rewarding career as well. And so I think that's what you were asking me about. But we're very excited about that program, and it wasn't just Meryl. She got us off to a jump start and really encouraged us as an organization to make that a cultural discipline for us to continue to do that, and it's worked really well for us.
That's fantastic. Curious, how does her talent, or others, not just her, with a different background, appear in front of both your customers and also the peers that she has within the company? I'm just curious about the human dynamics, because the academic backgrounds are quite a bit different. I'm just curious how that all fits in.
It's interesting, and I'm going to ask Liam to kind of chime in here because he's had a lot of experience with this too. But one thing that it's funny how your brain sorts out what you observe, and one of the things that I had never observed before until we started doing this is I realized that a lot of our more successful people that we had don't have the background that you would assume that they had. We have people that are come from all kinds of different unique backgrounds that aren't necessarily technical, and so if we look around, we'll find that people that are successful aren't necessarily the ones that decided to go major in computer science. We like people that have done that, but in some ways they can be not the best resources for thinking creatively around the big complicated issues that businesses and government faces today.
And I think from my perspective that the key thing is that, firstly, talent respects talent. If you have a lot of talented people, it doesn't really matter what their background is that they see other people like them in terms of their commitment, their intellect, their passion, and they won't be judging them just because they don't have a piece of paper from or an MBA or from an Ivy League or something like that. And yes, I mean, back in when I was a management consultant in London, a lot of my colleagues who were also enterprise architects and often extremely good technologists at the same time came from non-traditional backgrounds: accounting, political science, languages, history. Mm-hmm. One of my best friends to this day, I think, did history at Oxford, and has a phenomenal memory about all things about London. It's his deep passion of one of the great pleasures in life is going for a walk with him. But equally, he can apply that ability to structure. He probably has 1,000 years of London history memorized, just because that's his passion. That kind of intellect, that ability to structure information, sequence it, and be able to then communicate it is a phenomenal skill, and it's got nothing at all to do with what your undergraduate or graduate degree was. I think there's another thing that comes with that is that when you're looking for that kind of talent, those kind of systems thinking in areas like archaeology, music, and what have you, there's some other attributes that really stand out. One is curiosity, and the other is persistence. Is that I think archaeology certainly is not all Indiana Jones. There's a lot of sitting around sifting through sand with a sieve and using a tiny brush to brush things away. That kind of persistence in the pursuit of an objective is an incredibly important trait, and it's not something that is encouraged at, say, the average business school.
Well, and I think the willingness to sift through the sand.
You have to sift through the sand.
And it's hard and dirty work. Funny story, Sam, if you'll allow me. When Meryl was on this project in Egypt, she had a square in her dig, and they were literally for a couple of weeks sifting through millennia-old human excrement, they actually found things that told them something about the culture. But the willingness for someone that has been raised in a fairly privileged way and had a great academic career to go and sit there with someone that speaks a different language, the workers that they worked with, and gain their respect and sit there and sift through the poo. That's the kind of humans that we need in our business, and that's a character that we really respect.
Well, what you're talking about here is a deep analysis beyond the obvious, and that talent is rare, frankly. If we look, and I don't like to stereotype because that's unfair. I just want to give you give an example to our audience for a moment. someone that is steeped in programming, there's a lot of logic that goes on. Mm-hmm. But what you're hearing here is you're putting together patterns about what civilization looked like by a scattering of artifacts, which is very, very different. As we see it, that seems to be the talent that is permeating RG, frankly.
Yeah, we really need people, and in fact, I think the whole industry needs people who ask why. Why are we doing it this way? Why are we doing it at all? Why is there a need to try something different, rather than just simply trying to do the same thing harder over and over again, or same thing faster? It's that ability to ask why. If you think about someone who's involved in music or architecture or history or the arts, that creativity starts with a kind of question: is that why hasn't somebody done this? Why hasn't somebody painted this picture? Why hasn't somebody? Why was this civilization behaving this way? Why were they piling all their poop up in the desert? And that kind
why
of,
did they cease to exist?
Why did they cease to exist? Why did they cease to exist? It's an extremely good question. It's those kind of people who are coming into any situation with that constant questioning perspective of like, why am I here? Why are we doing this? That you start to get real insight and innovation, because they're not just accepting everything as it is, and they're not going to just sit there and say, well, we've been doing this for the last 50 years. And there's like 50 years schmears, try looking at how something evolved over 5,000 years. And that kind of like perspective and insight is really what drives a good consultant, and I think increasingly a good technologist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the whole aspect here is looking beyond the obvious implementation, as I call it. In other words, and I have nothing against, obviously, implementation specialists. They're quite important. But they're actually taking the work of your staff and your architects that have done the digging, and they're figuring out the why, and then they're essentially saying, okay, take that and implement it. And that's a very different talent than I think most people recognize from architects and implementers. That talent seems to be something that you're actually harvesting or mining through very different sources.
And it's actually one of the things I think it gets missed with, and we've not really talked about Agile and Agile development. And I've got around 30 years experience in rapid systems development and Agile. That gets missed when you're doing following Agile, in either whether it's safe or whether it's traditional Agile, which is the sagas and the epics, the most high level things that you're using to describe what you're building, are really asking about not just what someone is doing, but you're really at that point addressing why you're doing it. And that is actually an essential thing. If you don't understand why, you will not build a good solution. You will not create a compelling roadmap, and you will not create the best user interface, the user experience and solution that you can, unless everybody understands why, unless why permeates your stories. And that is why, there's that word again, Agile describes things as stories, because a good story is always about why. Yes, big reference back to Game of Thrones on Sunday.
With that, I want to wrap up here for just a minute. We are close to running out of time here. Gentlemen, if somebody wants to get a hold of your company, your website as we close out is?
www.teamrg.com. That's TEAMRG.com.
Fantastic. Brad, thank you for your time. Liam, thank you for your time. This is Sam Holcman with the 2020s Enterprise. I hope you enjoyed this very unique program today. Thank you again. We'll see you next time.